All right, I think we're recording. My screen is loading. All right, so this is where we ended last time. And we're going to go real quick through the moon race stuff here. You guys are actually supposed to be working on a different assignment with the moon race where you guys are actually going through and investigating each mission a little more closely. I'm going to go through a real quick overview. Project Mercury was the real early one. First American was Alan Shepard, and then Yuri Gagarin was the first Soviet cosmonaut in space. But just take a look at the Mercury capsule here. Man, that's tight. Mr. Wood, being slightly claustrophobic, would not enjoy sitting in that Mercury capsule there. And there's not much they did. Right? They were strapped into place here. They couldn't move around. There's nowhere to go anyway. So wasn't much to this. I don't know if I could have handled it. But hey, that's a great thing they did. Moving on to Project Gemini, I noticed the capsule is much larger. And again, the point of Gemini was to really get two spacecraft into orbit at the same time so they could link in orbit. So remember, we're going to the moon. We want to land on the moon and come back. So we need to be able to attach to the spacecraft because you don't want to take the full spacecraft down. It'd be much more difficult to get something that large off the moon. So that'd go through quick. And again, much larger. Again, a two-person spacecraft with, exit to the outside. So one of the missions was to do a spacewalk. So one of you will be researching that. Landing down. Again, they also mostly splash down in the ocean. Project Apollo. And again, the big one, Apollo landing on the moon with Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin. Usually calls Buzz. And again, 6 missions land on the moon. Again, much, much larger. This is kind of an interesting little diagram I found, how they actually went to the moon. So the red is the outbound flight, and the green is the inbound. So again, leaving here, it slingshots around Earth because that helps it pick up some speed. Goes back to the moon, does some time orbiting the moon, separates the lander comes back, they reattach, they take off back to Earth, and they come back and they splash down. Kind of interesting to look at the timeline of this, right? These are all in hours, so Earth to the moon, 76 hours, back to from the moon to the Earth, 79 hours. So roughly the same amount of time there and back. Not counting the time. I don't think they count the time that they spin around the moon. I don't think they count on the time orbit the moon. But yeah, interesting little diagram there as to what they actually did with the Apollo missions. And there's an Apollo capsule. Again, 3-person capsule, much larger, spending a lot more time in there. Massive fuel tank, so again, taking a lot more time in there. And they have to have energy to get back from the moon. And there's a capsule after the splashdown, just kind of give you an idea of the size of it. All right, so that's all we're going to do about the space race. Hopefully you guys are finding some good information about that. Again, if you're not, get a hold of me. Let's look at the new stuff now. Space shuttles, not really new stuff, used in the 80s. And the whole point of the space shuttle was to get stuff into space. I like to think of space shuttles as like a pickup. If you just want to go somewhere, a car is great. Gets good gas mileage. You can ride around in comfort. But if you want to haul something, you need a pickup truck. And that's what the space shuttle was. The whole point of the space shuttle was it was a 3-part craft. So usually we just think of the orbiter. So let's go ahead and take a picture of that. Take a look here. This white part, this is a cool launch. I like that. That we usually think of is what's called the orbiter. And that's the part that actually people were in. Obviously people in there. And then there's a huge cargo area. Then we have rocket boosters. And this whole thing would be the space shuttle. We have a solid rocket booster and a liquid rocket booster in there as well. There's the space shuttle landing. Big advantage of the space shuttle is it was reusable. They could spin it over and over again. Now, obviously, as it aged, the shuttle fleet aged, there are some problems with that. I'm assuming you're all familiar with the Columbia and the Challenger disasters. All right. Sorry for the interruption. We're back. Again, talking about the space shuttle. The whole point of the space shuttle was to carry material into space. And ties in very nicely with the next topic of space stations. And I think when I got a call here, I got interrupted. I think I was talking about the Challenger and the Columbia disasters. Again, as the space shuttles aged, they started wearing out, and that caused some problems. in both the Challenger spacecraft and the Columbia spacecraft. They both had catastrophic failures. Everyone aboard was lost. That's one of the main reasons they stopped using the space shuttles. Just wore out. They were built in the 80s. They used them into the 2000s. That's a 20-year period. That's a long time to use something that complicated repeatedly. All right, so let's talk about space stations. The idea of a space station is to be a more permanent structure. Not completely permanent. They still, wear out, and they have to rebuild them or make new ones more appropriately. But its idea is we want to do some long-term living and exploring in space, some long-term spacecraft ideas. So the point is to see, how can people live in space? Again, they orbit Earth with satellites. Here's the first one. This is called Skylab. And this shot down here was pretty much the entirety of Skylab. It's kind of cool. All right, that was where a couple people lived for, several months at a time. Not much to it, right? That was the entirety of Skylab. The nice river in the background. It's kind of cool. And this was, in the late 70s, so, a while ago. Mir was a very successful Russian space station, and it really paved the way for building the International Space Station. If you take a look at this, you can kind of point out that, oh yeah, this is very much modular construction. Each of these things was put up together separately, built up in parts. Lasted a long time, 86 to 2001. Of course, in the early 2000s, they stopped kind of using it as the International Space Station got built. It ended up burning up in re-entry. So they deorbited it, it burned up through the re-entry, so it was pretty much destroyed. And that brings us to the International Space Station. And this is an old picture of the International Space Station. That's incomplete. Launched in 1998, and they built it in stages. On the next page, I have a little video we'll watch here of them putting it together. It's kind of cool. All right, so they started with different containers and modules and laboratories. They added more and more solar panels. They have more power supply. Again, laboratories, storage platforms, remote arms. They can move stuff around on the outside with the aid of the arm. Trusses and connectors. It's fascinating how they put this together. It's a major undertaking from, multiple sources. It was an international space station. I love that they have external platforms right here. They just store stuff there. They have a porch. Again, adding more solar panels to meet more power requirements. Moving bits around so it fits better. More modules, more robotic arms. They have an open atmosphere and open to space module now that can do experiments in. I think that's kind of awesome. So they can do experiments out in space. All right, we're nearly done. So yeah, fascinating stuff. I'm not going to show you this one because we're kind of getting a little long on time here, but this one's real interesting as well. I encourage you to go and check it out on the notes. This is an astronaut, Williams, I believe is her name, and she actually just takes you on a little tour of the International Space Station and see what the inside looks like. It's really cool. Check it out. Current projects. This is fascinating. What are they actually working on now? Again, the shuttles were retired, and right now we're dependent on hitching a ride to the International Space Station in the Soyuz capsules, which are a Russian capsule. We're building our own, right? This is what's called the Orion capsule. Similar in style to the Apollo capsules, similar in size to the Apollo capsules, a little bigger yet. Has its own solar panels on it as well, and these are really designed to go places. The idea is we want to get back to the moon, and one of the Orion capsules is what could do that for us. So they actually have done a test launch. This is unmanned, but this is the Orion capsule after it landed. So they've actually done some testing with this stuff. SpaceX. You guys have heard of Elon Musk, the guy who makes the Tesla? Yeah, well, he has a space department as well. It's called SpaceX, and they do their own stuff. They do their own rocket launches. They have what's called the Dragon capsule. They have Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets they've done a lot of work with. This is our main supplier to the International Space Station right now, and supposedly they're working on human transport. So within the next couple of years, hopefully they'll get that figured out. All right, so the Google presentation was not letting me show you what I wanted to show you. This is a test launch of the Falcon Heavy rocket, and they're going to watch part of it, and I'll fast forward through parts of it. But the idea is this is their launch rocket system, and they want it to be recoverable. So typically the rockets aren't very well recovered. A lot of them are just then scrapped. But what they figured out was a way to make them take off and land in the same place they took off, and it's very cool to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the launch because that's really cool. And you can see it's taken off and it's going up, and it's going to take them right to the edge, actually out of the atmosphere. And I'll fast forward a little bit. All right. So 30 seconds in. 33 seconds into flight under the power of 5.1 million pounds. There's an announcer that's very excited. So it gets into space, and then they split to this view where they're actually showing you different parts of the rocket. So there's the rocket booster separating, and these are the parts they want to recover. Successful separation effected early over the Turing. Side boosters down. And those individual pieces. Boost back burn. The center core is throttled back up to power. Fast forward a little bit more. Main engine cut off. Side boosters landing burn will begin as well. So up here we have the view from the main rocket, and here are the other ones actually starting to land. So there's the actual Earth view, and then from the rockets themselves. Check this out, super cool. The rockets actually land right where they wanted them to. All computer controlled, all automatic, and those are able to be reused and reconditioned. I think that's super cool. The fact that we can pull that off is super cool. All right, so I hope this gets you excited about space and what's going on there. I will come back and talk a little bit more about extraterrestrial life in a different video, but for right now, that's pretty good. Work on the worksheets for our next time, and as always, if you have any questions, hey, let me know. Have a good day.